Hi there, dance studio owners, and welcome to the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. My name is Shannon Westphere, and I am the Inner Circle Program Manager here at the Dance Studio Owners Association. For the next 6 weeks, we couldn't be more excited to be introducing a brand new host here on the podcast. Leese Thistle is an extraordinary studio owner and Inner Circle member who will be leading from behind the microphone for a 6-part podcast series, Work Less, Make More. Annie is the CEO and Artistic Director of Performing Arts Academy of Marin, also known as PAM, in Mill Valley, California. Annie established PAM in the summer of 2009, facilitating its growth with the help of dedicated faculty and staff from humble beginnings in a church hall to a thriving community with state-of-the-art facilities and premier training in dance and the performing arts. In this limited series, Annie will be your guide to achieving more freedom and balance in your studio life as she walks you through her 6 secrets to a profitable 20-hour work week. If you're looking for resource and support to grow the dance studio of your dreams, make sure to join us in the Dance Studio Owners Association. It's completely free and filled with industry-leading tools that will empower you to grow your studio and reclaim your life. Join us today at dsoa.com/join. We hope you enjoy Work Less, Make More with Leese Thistle.
Hello, and welcome to DSOA's Transform My Dance Studio podcast. You are listening to episode 4 of Work Less, Make More, 6 Secrets to a Profitable 20-Hour Work Week with me, your host, Leese Thistle. By now, you know I am the CEO and Artistic Director of PAM, that's the Performing Arts Academy of Marin, in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am also a contently divorced mother of 3 children, ages 11, 6, and 3. So just like you, I have my hands full in all sorts of ways and am enjoying the process, even amid those times of a little bit of nuttiness. Last week, I promised we'd talk about times of challenge and overwhelm. As much as I'd like to share battle wounds with you, I'm going to shift our focus to how we plan for those times so we can come out gracefully, proud, and more prepared for our next opportunity. I will tell you that when planning this episode, I kept saying planning for our next roadblock, something in our path, something that's no fun. And it took me a minute to recognize the power of this particular word choice. Roadblocks are icky and not something that is really that exciting to get beyond. It's something that you have to deal with, that you're in front of. I imagine a lot of sighing and a lot of sweating involved. Opportunities, on the other hand, are exciting. Now, you'll notice I didn't say easy. Opportunity doesn't necessarily imply that it's a walk in the park or necessarily without any difficulty, but it does provide a bubbly, fun spark to keep you moving because there is something even better on the other side of whatever opportunity you are on the opposite side of currently. And that leads me to another intentional word choice, and that word is better as opposed to best. So make something better, become better, keep improving as opposed to attaining something that's the best. Now, in this inner circle, we've had the opportunity, there's that word, to hear Phil M. Jones speak live at 2 retreats in the past handful of years. Not only is Phil M. Jones an incredibly intelligent, engaging, and sharp speaker, he also has incredible knowledge and tools with regard to communication. And this is communication, particularly it was initially applied to how we're communicating with prospective clients, current clients. It also stretches across to personal relationships as well and is highly applicable there, in addition to those work applications. And his knowledge is inspiring to say the least, but the best part of it is that it's highly applicable with practice. I encourage you to check out his very quick read. It's a book called Exactly What to Say, The Magic Words for Influence and Impact. So be sure to check that out. It really is about an hour read. And for somebody, I'm an audiobook gal mostly. So, and I sat and read that on a very short portion of a plane ride. So I encourage you to do that. It's all very, very easy to put into practice. And by easy, I say the concepts are very digestible. Obviously, it takes work and practice to get good at this sort of thing. Now back to better versus best. And this is what Phil says. He says, better beats best. You just have to give it time. So better is the process. And what I took from that is, in my mind, I say, okay, well, better is dynamic. Better is changing. It evolves. It's interesting. It's adaptable. Best is static. And it's also somewhat subjective in terms of what does someone consider best. Certainly with a math problem, if it's right or wrong, but there is a certain amount of subjectivity to what we all consider best. So let's just continue to get better. The other fun word for me that comes up for best, and this is because I just watched an episode of the Great British Baking Show, is stodgy. And in the application that they use it in the show, stodgy means heavy or filling. And they usually talk about, I don't know, a muffin or a panettone or some other fancy word for food that I don't know all the baking terms. But stodgy also in general means dull and uninspired. And so for me, I'd rather take better, that's effervescent and moving, and all of those great words. So we're going to go for better. So let's get better together. One thing my dad always still says, is man plans, God laughs. And you don't have to be religious to understand this. You can replace God with universe or whatever word suits you and your beliefs, and what keeps you motivated. And the biggest time that I remember him saying this was in a previous lifetime when I was married. We got back from our honeymoon. I was 27 years old and realized I was pregnant. And my whole thing was, well, she ended up being a girl. I didn't know. This baby is in the plans down the line, but she was not part of the plan then. And that was when my dad looked at me, laughed, and said that to me. And we can take this to mean that planning is futile, or what I prefer to do is we can get creative with it and plan for the unplanned, which sounds like an oxymoron. There are ways to allow for you to have wiggle room and cushion in your life and in your schedule so that these unexpected moments, however small or large, can be absorbed with greater ease than if you were not leaving room for life to happen. So this finally, at long last, brings me to secret number 4, which I just said, creating a purposeful and deliberate cushion in your plans so that when things come up, it doesn't create a highly stressful situation that requires a lot of extra work that was not in the plans, or that creates a situation where you are up a creek without a paddle. So they say, bring it back to those good old camping days. This works for me. This cushion works for me across the board, from that planning of my day to my week to my year to even my tech schedule for an upcoming production. So I'll share with you a couple examples of how I use this in my life, and hopefully you can start utilizing some of this cushion planning as well for yourself. This is the same concept as saving for a rainy day, except the exchange unit is time instead of money. Some of you may already do this naturally without even knowing, and you can therefore become more intentional with this from this conversation that we're having together. Or if this is new for you, you can start small and begin applying it so that your day can have more ease and more breathing room in it as well. An easy example for you all brings up my lovely children. There are several days a week when I have them, and so I'm the sole parent when they're mine. And mornings were an adjustment to figure out how to do it all with one responsible adult versus having a team, which is what I had previously. So what I tended to do after several weeks of being late for preschool and kindergarten and grade school, last year I had kids in 3 separate schools. This year they're in 2, thankfully. So my out the door time now, I set it 15 minutes before I actually have to be driving out of the driveway. And that 15 minutes, I set it up no matter what, because I know that somebody will forget a backpack or a water bottle or forget to get a jacket, or all of a sudden I'll have my 3-year-old in the car looking at me and demanding a baba, which for her is just a glass of milk, essentially. And in those situations, as those of you who are parents, or I would say anybody who teaches children knows, there are times when you can pick battles and times when you can choose to go along with what they want. And as long as I get a please and a thank you within there, and we talk about proper language and proper addressing of humans in general, then I can quickly run up and grab that bubba that's so desperately needed in that moment of us clearly leaving and not having time for any of that. I'm sure those of you with toddlers, again, if you've even taught toddlers, and I'm talking more the 3-year-olds, those three-nagers, which again, for me, terrible twos are not really a thing. The three-nager is a real, viable, formidable force, and one that I get the absolute joy of handling in my life day in and day out. So again, those moments I've built in the time. So hopefully I now have used those 15 minutes in most cases and I'm out the door with still the ability, actually not out my door, up my driveway at a time that makes sense and everybody can relax. We listen to, well, recently it was Hocus Pocus 2 a lot in the car. So my 3-year-old again requests the witches, and all 3 of my kids sit in the car and sing all of those songs. Super fun. So again, we have that time because I've left the cushion and we aren't running around panicked, wondering how we get out the door on time. Am I still late sometimes? Yes. Does this help? Absolutely. Now a little bit about how I use this cushion in terms of my employees. Last episode, I talked about what my Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays look like in terms of overarching themes and goals for each one of those days. Wednesdays, as I mentioned, are my planning days. So my planning meetings are quick 15-minute meetings with my team leads before we have our 30-minute admin meeting. Knowing me and knowing my team, sometimes we need 11 minutes, sometimes we need 18 minutes. And the way that I allow for the insurance, which for me, the most important thing is for our admin meeting to start on time at 11:45, is that I plan those 15-minute meetings, and there are 3 of them, 1 hour prior to the start of the admin meeting. So I start at 10:45, and then I have a 15-minute window before my big admin meeting starts, which allows for the overflow time. It also, in an ideal situation, allows me 15 minutes to get a cup of tea, get a glass of water, wrap my brain around the agenda for our meeting in those ideal situations. If I need that time, I have it, and we don't have to loop back at a different time when that train of thought has already come to a halt and we need to restart that. The way that I set up those meetings too, which is important for you to know in terms of flow, is I have one Zoom meeting link that I use for everything. It's called the PAM CEO meeting link, set up with a waiting room. And my team knows that they check into the waiting room at the start time of their meeting, and they have things in front of them to do. And I will let them in when I am able to allow for that time for the meeting prior to them to get started, or rather to wrap up. And this is not to say that their meetings are pushed back by a huge margin of time, because that would not be respectful of their time nor good planning on my part. But if I need that extra 5 minutes here or there, I have it. And it's not detrimental to, number one, the flow of the individual meetings that I have. And number two, the ability for me to start my larger admin meeting on time, which for me is crucial in terms of accountability. And again, that respect for time, that larger meeting does start at 11:45 and is done at 12:15 or before 12:15 if we have less items to discuss. So that's how I plan for that on a small scale in terms of my Wednesday meetings. Something else to touch on are rehearsal weekends. So a little insight into how I use this planning cushion for my tech schedules and my rehearsal schedules so that we are able to stay mostly on track. And if we, again, very similar to that meeting example I just gave, if we get off track by a handful of minutes, that there is an easy way to click back into that track built in at some point within the scheduling process. So for the show that we're currently working on, which is our Holiday Spectacular, we have 3 rehearsal weekends for our main cast where we put that whole show together. Those weekends are blocked off much like a competition weekend, which all of my students are used to. And that is they reserve the entire weekend until I'm able to sit down with my team and plan out exactly when we need to rehearse. Those rehearsal schedules are planned on what has worked in years past. And then we move the times around according to availability of our team, as well as around homecoming. Because for me, the values in terms of what I'm instilling in my students is I want them to be able to experience some of those highlight moments of their high school careers, including homecoming. So we are taking all of those things into consideration. So we have them block the whole weekend off so we can get our ducks in a row. The rehearsal times are set out. Another thing that I have that I've shared with families when it's necessary, and other times not, but in my head and with my team, I have contingency weekends or a contingency plan built in if we have something unexpected come up. And this has happened. In previous years, it was an outbreak of COVID when we were back in person and perhaps we needed to not rehearse a specific weekend because of the number of cases. It has also in the past, being in Northern California, been during a weekend where we have the forest fires or the wildfires rather, and are unable to rehearse because of air quality. So I have already in my plan built in time for me to either eliminate an entire weekend of rehearsals or replace it at another time. And this is important because then I am not left scrambling when life hands us an opportunity to be great, right? So I am not sitting and freaking out about the lost rehearsal time. I already have set my mind around how we handle that. And that is either by building in another weekend, or I have actually in the past eliminated an entire weekend of rehearsals by reworking the remaining weekend. And also knowing that I've given all of the dances ample time to be uber prepared for the show. Therefore, if we lose 1 to 3 hours, it is not going to be a situation where we're scrambling. So that's not only planning, it's also mindset and preparedness for the whole entire big picture of whatever item you're working on planning. And that could be your week, it could be your meetings, it could be your class schedules. So applying that kind of thinking to the nuts and bolts will help you when those things get thrown your way. Now, I do that also for my tech load-ins and also observing human nature and how long it takes for people to get in and get settled. So this, again, taking the rehearsal model, applying it to when we're in a theater, I know that my call time has to be 3:30, even though I know kids get out of school, some of them at 3:30. I am not going to make the call time a reasonable time for them to get there after school because I need them to hustle. In my head, and my team knows from the tech sheet that we are not starting the run through until 4:30 or 5. I've budgeted for that because I know it's going to happen. I know we're going to be behind. I know the kids are going to arrive late. I know they're going to take time to get settled. So I have to be strategic. I have to be aware, and I can't put blinders on to create a plan that is wholly inexecutable when you look at the finer details of who you're dealing with. And this, again, can be applied in a lot of different scenarios. So I will tell them, you need to be there at 3:30, but Annie, we get out at 3:30. I know. Have your mom be the first one in line. Get out of school. I'm not asking you to miss school. I'm not asking you to come early. Have your mom first in line for pickup so you get out of the door right at 3:30 and you're here as quick as you can be. And we understand that, and we know you're doing your absolute best. And that has worked really well for me because I'm not leaving them dilly-dally room for them to go get a smoothie and a Starbucks and know that, okay, well, we're not starting the run through until 4:30. No, they know that they have to be there at 3:30. And I know as a leader that we're not really going to get started until X time. So again, anticipate the needs instead of pretending like these needs and realities don't exist. Do not avoid these scheduling problems or these scheduling just natural occurrences because they won't go away by you again, putting your head down and going, nope, we're going to start at 3:30. That way I can dismiss them at 7:30 so that their parents are happy. No, we're going to start at 4:30 or 5. Therefore, I have to dismiss them a little later, and everyone has to understand for the greater good of the show. That's the way it works for me. So this goes the same for my week. I have time built in that is unstructured during the day that can be applied where needed. And this allows me to do the things that pop up unexpectedly, such as forgetting to sign up for my parent-teacher conferences or having to be on the phone with Chase Bank because of a fraudulent charge that I was not anticipating. Anything, you name it, life happens. I've also stacked my week to reflect my personal needs, not necessarily first and foremost the needs of my staff. I also pay attention to my natural energy peaks and my preferred level of activity throughout the week to allow me to be my most productive and my most happy and satisfied. The way that I look at it, for me, I'm a morning person. I do better in the mornings. I think better. I function better. So those mornings are my me time. And so I have that, and I don't start my meetings until about 11 o'clock, also because I like to do the inner circle meetings. And so I like having my mornings for that. I've stacked my teaching to happen at the beginning of the week so I can have the end of the week for my vision planning, travel, or family time. Then you can move to your year and look at how your year works too. My school year is fairly structured and has lots of activities and is very goal oriented. It's also very exciting time for me. My summers are very light. So I buy back a lot of time and a lot of quality time with my family and with myself over those summers in terms of how I distribute those 20 hours a week, because during the summer, sometimes it's a whole lot less than 20 hours. Also, the importance of built-in breaks, not just for you, but for your whole team. So I know on our large calendar, we have a big push towards Thanksgiving. Once we get there, everybody breathes a sigh of relief. We come back rejuvenated. Same goes for all of the breaks that we have built in. And with us being in the school systems, we have natural breaks built in where we don't have to take breaks, but we have the privilege and the honor for me of being like, okay, well, schools are on spring break. We're on spring break too. This is happening, guys. And it works. It works for our schedule because it makes sense with our clients and who we're dealing with. So take advantage of those times too, which are so, so important. Now, the next thing that I want to leave you with, the very last thing, is a story about making a little time for yourself and treats. And it's something I shared with some of my high schoolers last night when we were in rehearsal for our upcoming competition. And I said to them, because they were feeling stressed out, I said, you all hear all the time that, oh, you just wait till you have real problems when you're a grown up. That's real stress. And I looked at them and I said, I disagree with that. Some of my hardest times, my most challenging times were when I was in high school and things would happen with friends or in school or with school work. You have so many people in your life that are in charge of where you go and what you do. And you are still learning the emotional capacity to handle all of the challenges that are coming at you. And I told them that is more of a stressful time I will speak for myself, than being an adult when I have the tools and the ability to make choices for myself and design the life that I want. Which they all have choices, but there are certain things still as children that are guiding them. And they are also learning how to process emotionally and mentally all the things going around them. And I told them, I said, you have all these things around you and the responsibilities do not go away. However, you can learn now to build in time for yourself that satisfies you, that makes you smile. And it was probably about 8 o'clock at night at that point. I said, maybe that's, talk to friends, read a book, watch a movie with a cup of hot chocolate. And they went, and they were like, yeah, that sounds so nice. So it was just nice to hit on those things with them, because I said that those things can create times when you are recharging that battery for yourself amid all of the things you have to do, and take each thing that comes at you as one item at a time, not a big insurmountable mountain. Climb that hill each and every day and have those little moments where you're smiling and doing the things that really bring you joy. And they all loved that. And I would have loved to have heard that as a teenager too. And much like the the teens and humans in general, we all have so many things that pull us in a lot of directions, but we have the choice and the ability to say no and make time for ourselves, which is so important, especially on the journey to creating a 20-hour work week. So where we are going from here, sometimes owning a business can feel like an island. On your way to accomplishing this 20-hour work week, you are going to want a team. And I'm not talking about your employees, but people who inspire and support you. In the next episode, we will continue to talk about getting better. I will talk about who those roles are for me and how you can assemble your ideal rally team as well. Until next time.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode of the Empire Formula on the Transform My Dance Studio podcast. If you are ready to take your studio to the next level, make sure to join us for free inside the Dance Studio Owners Association, where we have everything you need to grow your studio and reclaim your life. Join us today at dsoa.com/join. If you loved this episode, we encourage you to rate and review the podcast. These simple things allow us to continue bringing you world-class hosts and guests every Monday right here on the Transform My Dance Studio podcast.